Love Lies Bleeding. Directed by writer-director Rose Glass, who previously did Saint Maud, which was a small horror film, which we did review on this show. Nice first film, very scary, very kind of disturbing, good piece of horror. She's here with her sophomore follow-up, which stars Kristen Stewart as Lou. This takes place in the late 80s. Lou runs this or helps run this trashy gym in 1989. It's gross, it's dingy, it's dirty. That they're in New Mexico. She's kind of works in a criminal family. She herself is not so much a criminal, but her father, played by Ed Harris, is. He's like kind of a local mafia guy, crime lord, has his hands in lots of different legal and illegal enterprises. She tries to stay out of his business as best she can. One day she meets Katy O'Brien's character, Jackie, who comes into the gym. They immediately hit it off, start a friendship, start a romance between them. Katy O'Brien, who plays Jackie, is huge. She's like this jacked bodybuilder, and they just hit it off. They have a romance. But they live in this seedy kind of world of violence, of love, of addiction. And I don't want to get too much into plot, but I want to get into vibes. Things do not go well because of the settings they're in. Eventually, there's things like murders and the cover up of murders, violence, lots of that kind of thing going on. This is a really incredible film that really blew me away. I was excited to see it, and it really caught me by surprise. Lots to talk about, but Zach, what are your thoughts?
I think Love Lies Bleeding is a really incredible sophomore feature from Rose Glass. Like, it is hard enough to make a good movie once. Like, it is even harder to make a good movie twice and do something really different. This is something we talked about with Kyle Edward Ball coming out of Skinamarink, right? Wildly unique feature. I have no idea what he makes next to follow that up, because you can't just keep doing the same thing. You got to show studios that you can do more with a bigger budget. Love Lies Bleeding is exactly that. It is a unique setting. It is somewhere Rose Glass has never been, right? Originally, I heard this movie was supposed to take place in Scotland, and somehow she fell in love with the 80s bodybuilder scene in America, and that's where this takes place. Like, it is something she hasn't done before. It's a unique thriller with horror elements. And most importantly, like, it's just a really fun time at the movies. Lots of wincing in your seat. Lots of like, oh God, like lean it away and screen. It's stuff that's going on. Kristen Stewart's tremendous. I'm really excited to talk about it. Where do you want to get started?
Man, gosh. So let's start a little bit with our plot. So Jackie comes to town. Jackie's the bodybuilder person, and she's someone she's hitchhiked here, and she is totally into bodybuilding. Then there's this bodybuilding competition in Vegas she wants to get to, but she just needs work, and she kind of finds her way into the graces of Ed Harris. There's Ed Harris's character, and asks him for a job, and she gets in with this kind of seedy family. But a lot of what happens in this movie, there's lots of relationships, and one of the fascinating kind of topics is this: it's not domestic violence, but it's about the relationship between love and violence. Like we see this a lot, like sex and violence kind of always tied. It's very stereotypical, but it's very different because it's very much about relationships and violence within those relationships, both like person to person, father to son, husband to wife, wife to husband. Like it's taking on a very complex and nuanced look at something like domestic violence. I'm getting way off the rails.
No, you're
but
right.
It's part of what it's part of what's really fascinating to me about this.
Yeah, I think like the performances are managed to hold up a lot of like that nuance, along with like quality subtext, right? We find out that Ed Harris is running some illegal operations without anybody telling us that he's running illegal operations. Like, it's just made very obvious through clear visuals and intention of characters, how they move about and how they speak to each other. Him talking to a cop in a way that's like he's telling him what to do, like lets us know that, hey, Ed Harris is the man who's running things around town, whether you like it or not, right? Meanwhile, Kristen Stewart has to play a wildly unique performance coming hot off the heels of her Oscar Oscar-nominated performance in Spencer as Princess Diana. She is like this greasy, downtrodden, bad haircut lesbian working at a gym. Well, nothing is going right for her, right? She's got to like wipe down machines that are gross and clean toilets. And then Katy O'Brien walks in, right? Jackie, like this gorgeous bodybuilder, just seemingly out of the desert, who is perfect for this role. She's perfect for it. I read that she had interviewed or auditioned like 6 times for this, which is unbelievable to me. I don't know how you could have picked anybody else to be Jackie. Like, she's so fantastic. She plays this like big burly woman who's bent on going to this competition and is so looking forward to it. And she falls in love with Kristen Stewart's Lou, and the two of them have this great relationship for like 4 weeks before she heads to Vegas. And it's this kind of summer fling kind of thing that starts to take a real turn when circumstances don't come about the way one would expect. And suddenly, like, Jackie has to deal with all of this emotional energy that she's been keeping up inside, building up to this competition. And she turns into this character who's really, really unique. Like somebody I haven't seen in a feature before, you know, like a kind of character who I didn't expect. And meanwhile, Kristen Stewart's Lou is like just struggling to keep up with the energy and keep things together,
Keep it together
as it spins out of control. Like Ed Harris has crazy hair extensions, and I did give him a hard time because he's getting up there, and I was like, he's probably going to be sitting down in every scene. And not only is he not, but like he's still great, dude. Ed Harris still holds it down. Dave Franco's a lot of fun. Didn't even know he was in this movie. Cast is outstanding, like stellar direction all around.
Right. One of the performances are spot on. Cast is so good. One of the interesting side plots is that Ed Harris's daughter is married to Dave Franco's character, who clearly abuses her. They go to dinner where she has a black eye and a split lip, and and she loves her man. And this isn't about a judgmental thing, but you could tell that the people around this relationship want to do something about it and eventually do. But that all goes way more wrong in an effort to try to do the right thing. I think part of what I love about this world is that it's so grimy, and it's told so well in the visuals. Lou is addicted to cigarettes. Jack is addicted to steroids. Like, addiction's a big theme, but it's just like the grime and the sound. That there's a scene where she's throwing eggs into the trash can, and you see it go in, and it's like there's cigarettes and coffee grounds and God knows what else mixing with like egg yolks, and just the squelching and sounds in this movie are it's so moving. It was a really important part of that. But again, it's essentially a movie about relationships and how it's so easy for violence to creep into relationships, even between Lou and Jackie, our heroines, and they're not immune for it. And there's also this idea of using love and sex to manipulate people, and also manipulating people into getting love and sex. It's just a fascinating just way of looking at relationships and violence together.
Yeah. Lou and Jackie's relationship is like this really bright, like, glimmer of hope in a world that is horrifically cynical. Like Andy said, like, it is gross montages and squelching sounds. The film opens with this really great montage of people working out at the gym, and it's like sweat. It's like a close up on a nipple and like a guy's armpit while he's working. And then later you got like Jackie shooting steroids, and it's like needle going into a toe, and you're like, Jesus God,
Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah, like, oh God. And like that's something Rose Glass has got dialed in so good. She uses it in Saint Maud for horror, right? For intention. One of my favorite shots from Saint Maud, I remember from the trailer, I still think about it from time to time, is when Maud, in an act of self-punishment, puts like thumbtacks in her shoe on the inside facing up, and then puts them on. And the shot of her putting the shoe on and stepping into it and putting her weight, brutal. But all you're seeing on camera is somebody putting a shoe on. But like the presentation and dedication to like weaving a narrative is so great that you lean back in your seat. Like you feel visibly uncomfortable. And like, I can't believe she manages to bring that to this feature even more so than in the previous one. Like, stellar. I can't believe how good Rose Glass is at making me feel uncomfortable. And again, in a setting that's entirely unique from her previous feature. This is not a religious horror film. There are really cool horror elements intertwined throughout. It reminded me a lot of how David Lowery uses horror in The Green Knight. It's not a horror film by nature, but there's plenty of elements of horror that I think are used to enhance the kind of the thrilling nature of the story here. Really tremendous. Really tremendous. And also, can I say, a tidy runtime as well. Not too long, not too short, an hour 44. Oh boy. Rose Glass is just turning out banger after banger here.
Yeah, this definitely uses a lot of horror elements. There's a couple of jump scares, but there's quite a bit of body horror that happens in here. Like we're talking about, there's very brief scene, or there's a lot of scenes of Katy using, of Jackie using steroids. And yeah, it's just, she starts to use them just a little bit at the beginning, and then she's just full on addicted, where like, again, she's shooting up a lot between her toes are all bruised, and it's like those little visceral things where you're like, oh, it just makes you so uncomfortable. And just Rose Glass is so good at this. And again, you mix that in with some jump scares, some body horror, lots of violence. And I think one of the things I really loved about this film is the pacing, because we have a normal first act, lots of setup, and then it just steps on the gas for the last two acts 2 and 3. It's just gas the whole time. I was so locked in the entire time, like was not bored for 1 second. Really surprising, because I wasn't real sure what to expect from another Rose Glass second feature, but man, I was in it the whole time.
We don't do spoilers here on Off Script, but I do want to say that I think one of the things that, if you talk to somebody who's seen this film, if they're not so warm on it, it might be worth inquiring about kind of the atypical nature of the ending of this feature. It's bold, it's unique. This is the kind of cinema Andy and I like here on Off Script. So I was into it. I'm sure there will be people out there who are into like most of this movie, and then they get really perplexed by where things end up. But I think that makes it all the more exciting to recommend to people. Like it's unique and different and original. And I think Love Lies Bleeding is doing some really cool things. And while it may not be a big deal in mainstream cinema, it's gotten quite a release. And a lot like how I felt about coming out of like Lisa Frankenstein, like feels like it's got some cult roots. It really does. Like this feels like a really cool feature. I'm looking forward to seeing what Glass does next. Any other thoughts, Andy, for recommendations?
No, I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Love Lies Bleeding?
Absolutely. Some of the boldest cinema of the year so far. I know we're only 2.5 months in there, but really surprised by this. Was with it the whole time. It's grimy, it's dirty, it's taking a very complex look at the nature of relationships and violence and sex and love and all those things all combined. It's not neat, it's not messy. I mean, it's very messy. It's a lot of times this topic is very black and white, and it's very much in a gray area in this movie. Very thrilling, lots of good action. I can't wait to see what Rose Glass does next.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I would totally recommend Love Lies Bleeding. I think it's super fun. This is one of those movies that, like, every once in a while I'll be at like get together or something with some friends I haven't seen in a while, and somebody will be like, "Hey, what's a good movie you've seen lately?" Or something offbeat. Somebody who maybe goes and sees a couple features, and they're like, "What's something you saw that you'd recommend that you think not a lot of people would be into?" It'll probably be this. I'm gonna be like, "Oh, dude, Love Lies Bleeding was like weird and cool, and I loved it. Stewart's great. Katy O'Brien's great. Like, I had a lot of fun with this movie." It's odd in the best way. Yeah, the best kind of bold cinema. Would recommend, please go see Love Lies Bleeding in a theater. See it on a big screen too. Loud speakers. I really, really want you to lean back from like the gross stuff. It makes this stuff that's meaningful like all that much more so. And with that, we should move on to our next segment. A tight trailer park this week. All right, just a couple to talk about, but still worth mentioning. I'm going to take the first one, Andy. I did a little research on the back end here, so I've at least got a summary, but do you mind introducing our segment?
It's time for the trailer park